Welcome to the launch of one of the most eagerly anticipated cars of 2018, the Renault Megane RS. Don't you just love this paint colour? This is tonic orange, I think it's called. Big differences over this car to the Megane GT it's based on is the width. At the front, these fenders are around 60mm wider than a standard car. Same at the back as well, there's a wider track by about 45mm. This thing really has presence and muscle. Under the bonnet, the Megane RS has actually been the victim of some downsizing. Instead of the old 2 litre, there's now a 1.8 litre turbocharged 4-cylinder. But it gets more power than the old car. Power's up to around 205 kilowatts and torque's up to 300 newton meters. Gearbox choices, there's a 6-speed manual, hooray, and also a 6-speed dual clutch automatic transmission as well. This takes around 5.8 seconds to hit 100 kilometers per hour. But this also got some nifty tech to make sure this car could be the best driving Megane ever. I'm talking about the hydraulic bump stops that are coming off the Clio RS. And also, perhaps controversially, this comes with Renault Sport's 4Control 4-wheel steer technology. And I say controversially because some people have driven it on the Megane GT and don't like it. So this car has a lot to prove. Luckily, we're here in Jerez to find out if this car has what it takes to beat new opposition like the Honda Civic Type R. This car is a dual clutch automatic, which costs around $2,500 on top of the $45,000 price tag. Of course you should buy the 6-speed manual, it's far more involving, but do you know what? This dual clutch gearbox is leagues ahead of the horrible 2-pedal setup in the Clio RS. Like other Renaults, the Megane RS comes with a multi-sense configuration for the engine and gearbox modes. It also affects things like the 4-wheel steering, but we'll talk about that later. In sport mode, the gearbox is also really quite intuitive with matching what gear you're in, which is pretty handy because one of the big problems with this Megane RS are these paddles are just far too short. It's easy to miss it when you're turning into a corner. Where the Megane RS doesn't do quite so well is in things like comfort mode, when you're just sort of pottering around town. Then sometimes it can hold on to gears, it's quite strange. But overall, as we said, the gearbox is quick, smooth, far faster than a manual. Now, before I drove this car, personally, I was really worried that it had the Renault 4Control 4-wheel steer. But after a couple of days driving it, yeah, it's so much better than the setup in the Megane GT, which always feels really artificial. That said, I'm still not 100% convinced. I think we need more time in this car because when you turn into a corner at speeds of less than 100 kilometers per hour and the rear wheels turn in an opposite direction, and then that really pivots the car into the corner and reduces understeer, it still does feel quite artificial and quite eerie. Sometimes it even feels like you're oversteering before the apex, which for somebody like me isn't ideal. Renault Sport have used a hydraulic bump stops, the Clio has it already, and it really is an interesting solution because it means they haven't had to use adaptive dampers, which means this car rides pretty well on the sport chassis. Speaking of chassis, when this car goes and sell in Q3 in Australia, you'll only get the option of the sport chassis, which we're driving now. Think of that in a Megane range as the comfort model. To get the cup suspension, which adds 10% stiffer springs, you'll have to wait until 2019. When you opt for the cup suspension in Europe, you also get more powerful brakes, those 10% stiffer springs, and a Torsen mechanical limited slip differential. When you've got this amount of torque going through the front wheels, you've just got to have a mechanical diff. Exceedingly capable on track, keenly priced, and more practical. It really does feel that Renault Australia has a winner on its hands with a 3rd generation Megane RS.